They continued 3 years without war between Syria and Israel. In the 3rd year, Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. The king of Israel said to his servants, "You know that Ramoth-Gilead is ours, and we do nothing, and don't take it out of the hand of the king of Assyria." He said to Jehoshaphat, "Will you go down with me to battle to Ramoth-Gilead?" Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, "I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, "Please inquire first for Yahweh's word." Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said to them, "Should I go up against Ramoth-Gilead to battle, or should I refrain?" They said, "Go up, for the Lord will deliver it into the hand of the king." But Jehoshaphat said, "Isn't there here a prophet of Yahweh that we may inquire of him?" The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "There is yet one man by whom we may inquire of Yahweh, Micaiah, the son of Imlah. But I hate him, for he does not prophesy good concerning me, but evil." Jehoshaphat said, "Don't let the king say so." Then the king of Israel called an officer and said, "Quickly get Micaiah, the son of Imlah." Now the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, were sitting each on his throne, arrayed in their robes, in an open place at the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets were prophesying before them. Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, made himself horns of iron, and said, "Yahweh says, with these you will push the Syrians until they are consumed." All the prophets prophesied so, saying, "Go up to Ramoth-Gilead and prosper, for Yahweh will deliver it into the hand of the king." The messenger who went to call Micaiah spoke to him, saying, "See now, the prophets declare good to the king with one mouth. Please let your word be like the word of one of them, and speak good." Micaiah said, "As Yahweh lives, what Yahweh says to me, that I will speak." When he had come to the king said to him, "Micaiah, shall we go to Ramoth-Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear?" He answered him, "Go up and prosper, and Yahweh will deliver it into the hand of the king." The king said to him, "How many times do I have to adjure you that you speak to me nothing but the truth in Yahweh's name?" He said, "I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains, as sheep that have no shepherd. Yahweh said, these have no master. Let them each return to his house in peace." The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Didn't I tell you that he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil?" Micaiah said, "Therefore hear Yahweh's word. I saw Yahweh sitting on his throne, and all the army of heaven standing by him, on his right hand and on his left. Yahweh said, who will entice Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth-Gilead?" One said one thing, and another said another. A spirit came out and stood before Yahweh and said, "I will entice him." Yahweh said to him, "How?" He said, "I will go out and will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets." He said, "You will entice him and will also prevail. Go out and do so. Now therefore, behold, Yahweh has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these your prophets, and Yahweh has spoken evil concerning you." Then Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, came near, and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, "Which way did Yahweh's Spirit go from me to speak to you?" Micaiah said, "Behold, you will see on the day when you go into the inner room to hide yourself." The king of Israel said, "Take Micaiah and carry him back to Ammon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son. Say, the king says, put this fellow in the prison and feed him with the bread of affliction and with water of affliction until I come in peace." Micaiah said, "If you return at all in peace, Yahweh has not spoken by me." He said, "Listen, all you people." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "I will disguise myself and go into the battle, but you put on your robes." The king of Israel disguised himself and went into the battle. Now the king of Syria had commanded the 32 captains of his chariots, saying, "Don't fight with small nor great, except only with the king of Israel." When the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, they said, "Surely that is the king of Israel." They came over to fight against him. Jehoshaphat cried out. When the captains of the chariots saw that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back from pursuing him. A certain man drew his bow at random and struck the king of Israel between the joints of the armor. Therefore he said to the driver of his chariot, "Turn around and carry me out of the battle, for I am severely wounded." The battle increased that day. The king was propped up in his chariot, facing the Syrians, and died at evening. The blood ran out of the wound into the bottom of the chariot. A cry went throughout the army at the going down of the sun, saying, "Every man to his city, and every man to his country." So the king died, and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. They washed the chariot by the pool of spoke. Now the rest of the acts of Ahab, and all that he did, and the ivory house which he built, and all the cities that he built, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Ahab slept with his fathers, and Ahaziah, his son, reigned in his place. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, began to reign over Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. He walked in all the ways of Asa his father. He didn't turn away from doing that which was right in Yahweh's eyes. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Jehoshaphat made peace with the king of Israel. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoshaphat, and his might he showed, and how he fought, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? The remnant of the Sodomites that remained in the days of his father, Asa, he put away out of the land. There was no king in Edom. A deputy ruled. Jehoshaphat made ships of Tarshish to go to Ophir for gold, but they didn't go, for the ships wrecked at Ezion Geber. Then Ahaziah the son of Ahab said to Jehoshaphat, "Let my servants go with your servants in the ships." But Jehoshaphat would not. Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in his father David's city. Jehoram his son reigned in his place. Ahaziah the son of Ahab began to reign over Israel in Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight, and walked in the way of his father, and in the way of his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, in which he made Israel to sin. He served Baal, and worshipped him, and provoked Yahweh, the God of Israel, to anger in all the ways that his father had done so. The vision of Obadiah. This is what the Lord Yahweh says about Edom. We have heard news from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the nations, saying, "Arise, and let's rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made you small among the nations. You are greatly despised, and the pride of your heart has deceived you, you who dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, who says in his heart, who will bring me down to the ground? Though you mount on high as the eagle, and though your nest is set among the stars, I will bring you down from there, says Yahweh. If thieves come to you, if robbers by night, oh, what disaster awaits you. Wouldn't they only steal until they had enough? If grape picklers come to you, wouldn't they leave out some gleaning grapes? How Esau will be ransacked, how his hidden treasures are sought out. All the men of your alliance have brought you on your way, even to the border. The men who were at peace with you have deceived you and have prevailed against you. Friends who eat your bread lay a snare under you. There is no understanding in him. Won't I in that day, says Yahweh, destroy the wise men out of Edom, and understanding out of the mountain of Esau? Your mighty men, Teman, will be dismayed, to the end that everyone may be cut off from the mountain of Esau by slaughter. For the violence done to your brother Jacob, shame will cover you, and you will be cut off forever. In the day that you stood on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away his substance, and foreigners entered by his gates, and cast lots for Jerusalem, even you were like one of them. But don't look down on your brother in the day of his disaster, and don't rejoice over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Don't speak proudly in the day of distress. Don't enter into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Don't look down on their affliction in the day of their calamity, neither seize their wealth in the day of their calamity. Don't stand in the crossroads to cut off those of his who escape. Don't deliver up those of his who remain in the day of distress. For the day of Yahweh is near all the nations. As you have done, so it will be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your head. For as you have drunk on my holy mountain, so the nations will drink continually. Yes, they will drink, swallow down, and it will be as though they had not been. But in Mount Zion there will be those who escape, and it will be holy. The house of Jacob will possess their possessions. The house of Jacob will be a fire, the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. They will burn among them and devour them. There will not be any remaining to the house of Esau. Indeed, Yahweh has spoken. Those of the south will possess the mountain of Esau, and those of the lowland, the Philistines, they will possess the field of Ephraim and the field of Samaria. Benjamin will possess Gilead. The captives of the army of the children of Israel who are among the Canaanites will possess even to Zarephath, and the captives of Jerusalem who are in Shephared will possess the cities of the Negev. Saviours will go up on Mount Zion to judge the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be Yahweh's. A Psalm by Asaph. God presides in the great assembly. He judges among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak, the poor and the fatherless. Maintain the rights of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them out of the hand of the wicked. They don't know, neither do they understand. They walk back and forth in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, "You are gods. All of you are sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, you shall die like men, and fall like one of the rulers. Arise, God, judge the nation, for you inherit all of the nations." A Song, a Psalm by Asaph. God, don't keep silent. Don't keep silent, and don't be still, God. For behold, your enemies are stirred up. Those who hate you have lifted up their heads. They conspire with cunning against your people. They plot against your cherished ones. Come, they say, let's destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have conspired together with one mind. They form an alliance against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria is also joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot. Do to them as you did to Midian, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the river of Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb. Yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, "Let's take possession of God's pasture lands." My God, make them like tumbleweed, like chaff before the wind, as the fire that burns the forest, as the flame that sets the mountains on fire. So pursue them with your tempest, and terrify them with your storm. Fill their faces with confusion, that they may seek your name, Yahweh. Let them be disappointed and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be confounded and perish, that they may know that you alone, whose name is Yahweh, are the Most High over all the earth. Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. Ahaziah fell down through the lattice in his upper room that was in Samaria, and was sick. So he sent messengers and said to them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I will recover from this sickness. But Yahweh's angel said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messenger of the king of Samaria, and tell him, It is because there is no God in Israel that you go to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron. Now therefore Yahweh says, You will not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but you will surely die. Then Elijah departed. The messengers returned to him, and he said to them, Why is it that you have returned? They said to him, A man came up to meet us, and said to us, Go return to the king who sent you, and tell him, Yahweh says, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you send to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you will not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but will surely die. He said to them, What kind of man was he who came up to meet you and told you these words? They answered him, He was a hairy man, and wearing a leather belt around his waist. He said, It is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent a captain of 50 with his 50 to him. He went up to him, and behold, he was sitting on top of the hill. He said to him, Man of God, the king has said, Come down. Elijah answered to the captain of 50, If I am a man of God, then let fire come down from the sky and consume you and your 50. Then fire came down from the sky and consumed him and his 50. Again he said to another captain of 50 with his 50. He answered him, Man of God, the king has said, Come down quickly. Elijah answered them, If I am a man of God, then let fire come down from the sky and consume you and your 50. Then God's fire came down from the sky and consumed him and his 50. Again he said to the captain of a third 50 with his 50. The third captain of 50 went up and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and begged him and said to him, Man of God, please let my life and the life of these 50 of your servants be precious in your sight. Behold, fire came down from the sky. Behold, fire came down from the sky and consumed the last 2 captains of 50 with their 50s. But now, let my life be precious in your sight. Yahweh's angel said to Elijah, Go down with him. Don't be afraid of him. Then he arose and went down to him, to the king. He said to him, Yahweh says, Because you have sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, is it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore you will not come down from the bed where you have gone up, but you will surely die. So he died according to Yahweh's word which Elijah had spoken. Jehoram began to reign in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, aren't they written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? When Yahweh was about to take Elijah up by a whirlwind into heaven, Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, Please wait here, for Yahweh has sent me as far as Bethel. Elisha said, As Yahweh lives, as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So they went down to Bethel. The sons of the prophets who were at Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today? He said, Yes, I know. Hold your peace. Elijah said to him, Elisha, please wait here, for Yahweh has sent me to Jericho." He said, "As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The sons of the prophets who were at Jericho came near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that Yahweh will take away your master from over you today?" He answered, "Yes, I know. Hold your peace." Elijah said to him, "Please wait here, for Yahweh has sent me to the Jordan." He said, "As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you." Then they both went on. 50 men of the sons of the prophets went and stood opposite them at a distance, and they both stood by the Jordan. Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the waters, and they were divided here and there, so that both went over on dry ground. When they had gone over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be on me." He said, "You have asked a hard thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will be so for you. But if not, it will not be so." As they continued on and talked, behold, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen!" He saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in 2 pieces. He also took up Elijah's mantle that fell from him and went back and stood on the banks of the Jordan. He took Elijah's mantle that fell from him and struck the waters and said, "Where is Yahweh, the God of Elijah?" When he also had struck the waters, they were divided apart, and Elisha went over. When the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho facing him saw him, they said, "The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha." They came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. They said to him, "See now that we are your servants, 50 strong men. Please let them go and seek your master. Perhaps Yahweh's spirit has taken him up and put him on some mountain or into some valley." He said, "Don't send them." When they urged him until he was ashamed, he said, "Send them." Therefore they sent 50 men, and they searched for 3 days but didn't find him. They came back to him while he stayed at Jericho, and he said to them, "Didn't I tell you, don't go?" The men of the city said to Elisha, "Behold, please, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my lord sees, but the water is bad and the land is barren." He said, "Bring me a new jar and put salt in it." Then they brought it to him. He went out to the spring of the waters and threw salt into it, and said, "Yahweh says, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from there any more death or barren wasteland." So the waters were healed to this day, according to Elisha's word which he spoke. He went up from there to Bethel. As he was going up by the way, some youths came out of the city and mocked him, and said to him, "Go up, you baldy! Go up, you baldy!" He looked behind him and saw them, and cursed them by Yahweh's name. Then 2 female bears came out of the woods, and mauled 42 of these youths. He went from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. Now Jehoram, the son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in Samaria in the 8th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, and reigned 12 years. He did that which was evil in Yahweh's sight. but not like his father and like his mother, for he put away the pillar of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he held to the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, with which he made Israel to sin. He didn't depart from them. Now Mesha, king of Moab, was a sheep breeder, and he supplied the king of Israel with 100,000 lambs and the wool of 100,000 rams. But when Ahab was dead, the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. King Jehoram went out of Samaria at that time and mustered all Israel. He went and sent to Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, saying, "The king of Moab has rebelled against me. Will you go with me against Moab to battle?" He said, "I will go up, as I am as you are, my people as your people, my horses as your horses." Then he said to them, "Which way shall we go up?" Jehoram answered, "The way of the wilderness at Edom." So the king of Israel went with the king of Judah and the king of Edom, and they marched for 7 days along a circuitous route. There was no water for the army, or for the animals that followed them. The king of Israel said, "Alas, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." But Jehoshaphat said, "Isn't there a prophet of Yahweh here, that we may inquire of Yahweh by him?" One of the king of Israel's servants answered him, "Elisha the son of Shaphat, who poured water on the hands of Elijah, is here." Jehoshaphat said, "Yahweh's word is with him." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. Elisha said to the king of Israel, What have I to do with you? Go to the prophets of your father and to the prophets of your mother." The king of Israel said to him, "No, for Yahweh has called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." Elisha said, "As Yahweh of armies lives, before whom I stand, surely were it not I who respect the presence of Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, I would not look toward you, nor see you. But now bring me a musician." When the musician played, Yahweh's hand came on him. He said, "Yahweh says, make this valley full of trenches. For Yahweh says, you will not see wind, neither will you see rain, yet that valley will be filled with water, and you will drink, both you and your livestock, and your animals. This is an easy thing in Yahweh's sight. He will also deliver the Moabites into your hand. You shall strike every fortified city, and every choice city, and shall fell every good tree, and stop all springs of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones." In the morning, about the time of offering the sacrifice, behold, water came by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water. Now when all the Moabites heard that the kings had come up to fight against them, they gathered themselves together, all who were able to put on armor, young and old, and stood on the border. They rose up early in the morning, as the sun shone on the water, and the Moabites saw the water opposite them as red as blood. They said, "This is blood. The kings are surely destroyed, and they have struck one another. Now therefore, Moab, to the plunder." When they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and struck the Moabites, so that they fled before them, and they went forward into the land, attacking the Moabites. They beat down the cities, and on every good piece of land each man cast his stone and filled it. They also stopped all the springs of water, and cut down all the good trees, until in Kir Hareseth all they left was its stones. However, the men armed with slings went around it and attacked it. When the king of Moab saw that the battle was too severe for him, he took with him several hundred men who drew a sword to break through to the king of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his oldest son, who would have reigned in his place, and offered him for a burnt offering on the wall. There was great wrath against Israel, and they departed from him and returned to their own land. Now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. You know that your servant feared Yahweh. Now the creditor has come to take for himself my 2 children to be slaves." Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" She said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a pot of oil." Then he said, "Go, borrow empty containers from all your neighbors. Don't borrow just a few containers. Go in and shut the door on you and also on your sons, and pour oil into all those containers, and set aside those which are full." So she went from him and shut the door on herself and on her sons. They brought the containers to her, and she poured oil. When the containers were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another container." He said to her, "There isn't another container." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God. He said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest." One day Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she persuaded him to eat bread. So it was that as often as he passed, he turned in there to eat bread. She said to her husband, "See now, I perceive this is a holy man of God who passes by us continually. Please, let's make a little room on the roof. Let's set a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp stand for him there. When he comes to us, he can stay there." One day he came there, and he went to the room and lay there. He said to Gehazi his servant, "Call this Shulamite." When he had called her, she stood before him. He said to him, "Say now to her, Behold, you have cared for us with all this care. What is to be done for you? Would you like to be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the army?" She answered, "I dwell among my own people." He said, "What then is to be done for her?" Gehazi answered, "Most certainly she has no son, and her husband is old." He said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood in the door. He said, "At this season next year you will embrace a son." She said, "No, my lord, you man of God, do not lie to your servant." The woman conceived and bore a son at that season, when the time came around, as Elisha had said to her. When the child was grown, one day he went out to his father to the reapers. He said to his father, "My head, my head." He said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees until noon, and then died. She went up and laid him on the man of God's bed, and shut the door on him and went out. She called to her husband and said, "Please, send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and to come again." He said, "Why would you want to go to him today? It is not a new moon or a Sabbath." She said, "It's all right." Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, "Drive and go forward. Don't slow down for me unless I ask you to." So she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her afar off, he said to Gehazi his servant, "Behold, there is a Shunammite. Please now run to meet her, and ask her, Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child?" She answered, "It is well." When she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught hold of his feet. Gehazi came near to thrust her away, But the man of God said, Leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and Yahweh has hidden it from me, and has not told me. Then she said, Did I ask you for a son, my lord? Didn't I say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and go your way. If you meet any man, don't greet him, and if anyone greets you, don't answer him again. Then lay my staff on the child's face. The child's mother said, As Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Gehazi went ahead of them and laid his staff on the child's face. But there was no voice and no hearing. Therefore he returned to meet him and told him, The child has not awakened. When Elisha had come into the house, behold, the child was dead and lying on his bed. He went in therefore and shut the door on them both, and prayed to Yahweh. He went up and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, and his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. He stretched himself on him, and the child's flesh grew warm. Then he returned and walked in the house once, back and forth, then went up, stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. He called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. When she had come into him, he said, Take up your son. Then she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground. Then she picked up her son and went out. Elisha came again to Gilgal. There was a famine in the land, and the sons of the prophet were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, Get the large pot, and boil stew for the sons of the prophet. One went into the field to gather herbs, and found wild vine, and gathered a lapful of wild gourds from it, and came and cut them up in the pot for stew, but they didn't recognize them. So they poured out for the men to eat. As they were eating some of the stew, they cried out and said, Man of God, there is death in this pot. And they could not eat it. But he said, Then bring meal. He threw it in the pot and said, Serve it to the rest of the people, that they may eat. And there was nothing harmful in the pot. A man from Baal Shalishah came and brought the man of God some bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and fresh ears of grain in his sack. Elisha said, Give to the people, that they may eat. His servant said, What should I set this before 100 men? But he said, Give it to the people, that they may eat. For Yahweh says, They will eat, and will have some left over. So he set it before them, and they ate, and had some left over, according to Yahweh's word.